Hi, everyone. Welcome. The Trauma Research Foundation joyfully welcomes you to our inaugural session of Integrate, a mind-body practice for working through trauma. We're so excited for you to join us on this journey. Inspired by the insights of our founder, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, and his groundbreaking book, The Body Keeps the Score, this program invites you to reconnect with the parts of yourself that may have been set aside or overlooked and embrace a more curious, more connected you. In this safe and supportive space, you'll have the opportunity to move, explore, and uncover the deep connection between your mind and your body. Together, we'll engage in virtual body-based sessions led by experts in trauma and movement. Whether you support others or you're focusing on your own healing journey, there's something valuable for everyone. Come as you are, stay to discover who you were meant to be. If you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, please like, share, and subscribe. It tells them that this content is valuable and they'll show it to more people. From the Trauma Research Foundation, I'm your host, Mary Frangie, and I'm joined by Carrie Cyrus, Connor McCann, and Liz Coda behind the scenes. We are absolutely thrilled to introduce our first Integrate session, Waking the Tiger, a somatic healing journey with Dr. Peter Levine, developer of Somatic Experiencing. We are so excited and grateful to have Dr. Levine spending time with us. Peter Levine is the developer of Somatic Experiencing, a naturalistic and neurobiological approach to healing trauma, which he has developed over the past 50 years. He holds a doctorate in biophysics from UC Berkeley and a doctorate in psychology from the International University. He is the founder and president of the Ergos Institute for Somatic Education, dedicated to community outreach and post-advanced somatic experiencing training, and the founder and advisor for Somatic Experiencing International. He has taught at the University of California, Berkeley, Mills College, Antioch University, the California Institute of Integral Studies, and the Santa Barbara Graduate Institute. His work has been taught to over 30,000 therapists and in over 42 countries. Dr. Levine is the author of several best-selling books on trauma, including the classic Waking the Tiger, Healing Trauma, which has been published in over 29 languages. Other books are In an Unspoken Voice, How the Body Releases Trauma and Restores Goodness, Trauma and Memory, Brain and Body in a Search for the Living Past, and his latest book, An Autobiography of Trauma, A Healing Journey. In recognition of his groundbreaking therapeutic works, Dr. Levine has received Lifetime Achievement Awards from Psychotherapy Networker and from the U.S. Association for Body-Oriented Psychotherapy, an honorary award as the Rhys Davis Chair in Los Angeles for his lifetime contribution to infant and child psychiatry, and a Lifetime Achievement Lifetime Achievement Award from the Association for Training on Trauma and Attachment in Children for his lifelong commitment to healing children through research, education, and outreach. He served as a stress consultant for NASA in the early space shuttle development and has served on the American Psychological Association Task Force for responding to the trauma of large-scale disasters and ethno-political warfare. My goodness,
Well,
Dr.
you're
Levine,
tiring me out.
thank you so much for being here. Please take it away.
Okay. So, um, well, let's just start with some what I think are useful talking points. And then after a while, I'll take questions. And then I'll do a live demo with somebody who I've never worked with and who has not done somatic experiencing therapy herself. And so let me just start with one that's, when I started, you said 50 years, it was actually a little bit more than that. But I think the important thing is the definition of trauma as PTSD was no longer there. So it wasn't thought of as a brain disorder, maybe even a brain disease, which at best could be managed by medication and by helping people change their negative thoughts. And for me, I learned it was something that happens in the body, and it gets caught in the body. Of course, the body affects the mind, as does the mind, the brain affect the body. There's a clear two-way link. And as we'll see, that link is probably even stronger from what's going on in our bodies to our brain, sometimes called the sixth sense or interoception. So I'm going to give an example here, and I will, if you wish, any of you who wish can follow with my guidance and experience the exercise. But please don't feel in any way compelled to do that. Most of the exercises are relatively easy to do, but it can bring up different feelings, images, memories, and so forth. So one of the first things that I discovered was that trauma, first of all, is a protection mechanism, originally protecting us from insult, from injury, but then protecting us from our own feelings and our own emotions. And that becomes a closed loop, a positive feedback loop with negative consequences. So let me give an example. So let's say this person, as a child, was hit by a parent. And I mean, sometimes something like that may happen once. It should never happen, of course. But often it happens in a chronic way. So the child learns to anticipate the hit, and they protect themselves like this. They raise their shoulders, they pull away. That's a defensive bodily reaction. And as I say, I remember while I was working in the the former Yugoslavian countries near the end of the war, and I was watching some BBC uh, uh, coverage, and you could see these old ladies were walking across the street, and then there was an explosion, and they went like this, and they went back, but you could see their shoulders came back down again. Then they went across again. And then the second time there was an explosion. And again, they went into this defensive bracing response. The third time, the shoulders stayed up. And that was telling me that they were going to have a memory, a body memory, a somatic memory of the threat and danger that they were experiencing. So let's go back to the idea of being hit or being hit by an emotion. So it doesn't necessarily just have to be physical. It can also become an emotional injury, an emotional bracing. So frequently people come in to present pain, not necessarily flashbacks or memories, but the way the memories have become embodied. So a person may be experiencing pain, chronic pain, not uncommon for the shoulders, okay? So when the person is experiencing the pain, I might ask them to notice if they can locate a tension that's underneath the pain. And then the person will often say, I feel a tension in my shoulders. So then the next question could be, and when you feel that tension, what would happen if it were actually to increase? And they go like this. And I say, okay, but now I want you to do it very slowly. Just increase the tension a little teeny bit and then letting it go and releasing it. So instead of going like this, to just go up the slightest amount, you can barely see me, and then releasing and then waiting and noticing what sensations come up when you do the awareness exercise. Okay. So again, anybody who wants to join me to just notice if they're experiencing a pain or a tension in their shoulder and what that tension might want to do if it increased. And just to do that, the smallest amount, you can barely see it, it's barely perceptible, and then letting it go and releasing it. And notice sensations, feelings, images, thoughts, memories. Okay. And then just kind of orient back into the room where you are, looking at things in the room, things that engage your interest, your curiosity, a painting, a green outside the window, just anything that you enjoy. So again, in trauma, we don't go right into the trauma in somatic experiencing. We really kind of go around the periphery of it so that the instinctual bracing responses can de-potentiate. So, okay, so anybody who wants to join me, just feel your shoulders going up a little bit, releasing them, and then just waiting, attending to sensations, feelings, thoughts, images, memories. Okay, so again, what happens when this becomes chronic is that tension is actually signaling to the brain that there's threat. So the body is telling the brain what's going on. Now, very often we talk about the brain trying to explain to us what's going on, and it might be a misattribution. I mean, it could be a correct attribution. It could also be a misattribution. So again, kind of to untangle those threads. That's a lot when Bessel and I were together in Esalen and uh, in Vermont. These are some of the things we really were talking about together and kind of playing with them. So, okay, so that's and so again, until the internal experience changes, the trauma continues to replay itself in the body as though it were still going on. Again, so there may not be flashbacks, there may be, or there may be not, but there's something certainly going on in the body. Another thing that people very often report is that they have pain in their gastrointestinal pain, sometimes called irritable bowel syndrome. Now, that's again a very typical bodily response. So let's just say you open your door and you go out and look out into the street, and somebody has fallen off a bicycle, and it looks like they're injured. Now, the brain is programmed to respond injury as threat. When I've worked with vets, different veterans from different, war areas, that seeing somebody injured was more traumatic than actually being injured. So again, the brain detects injury and warns us that there's threat. Okay, so you come out, you see the injury, and you go, ugh. And that's the brain telling the guts that there's potential injury to you. So again, you feel that, and you look and you see the person's been injured really more severely even. So of course you call emergency, you call 911 if you're in the US, and just, stay with them. And but then at the end, when we go back, the ambulances come or whatever, and we notice our guts are still twisted. And maybe even that night we go to bed, we feel our guts, and then we have an image of the events of that day. Now, there's a nerve that connects the brain with the body and the body with the brain. It's called the vagus nerve, and it's the largest nerve in the body by far. The vagus nerve is, and this is actually interesting because Charles Darwin actually wrote about this in the 1800s, and he called it the pneumogastric nerve. And he also said that it was responsible for gut wrench and heartbreak. So let's look at this nerve, largest nerve in the body, going from the back of the brain stem down into the guts, into all of the gastrointestinal organs of digestion and elimination, but also goes to the heart and the lungs. Again, Darwin called it the pneumogastric nerve. Now, that nerve is 80% afferent, sensory. In other words, that the great majority of the fibers in that nerve are actually taking information from the guts and sending it back up to the brain. So let's go back to the situation where we see somebody injured. The brain again recognizes injury, sends a yuck signal down into the guts, and then that information. Remember, 80% of that nerve is taking information from the guts, takes it back up to the brain where it's amplified. And so first we experience this, oh, and then, ugh, and then, ugh. And if things like that, due to injury, again, can be emotional injury, it continues to reverberate. Again, I call this a positive feedback loop with negative consequences. In other words, that distress signals gets amplified, and we then start having that yucky feeling within us. Now, when I started developing SE in the late 60s and 70s, I was looking for ways to get new signals to the brain so that those signals of distress didn't continue to get amplified. And the following is an exercise. Again, you're welcome to join me, but please, again, don't feel any need to. The idea is to take an easy, full breath, and on the exhalation, making the sound voo, as though it's coming from the guts. And then just let the breath and the sound go all the way out. And then they just wait for the breath to come back in on its own, filling belly and chest. Then repeat. So I'll do it once or twice. And then anybody who wants to do it, please be free to do it, okay? Okay, so here it goes. Ooh. When I'm vibrating it down in the belly, ooh. When I let the breath and the sound all the way out and wait for the breath to come in on its own. Ooh. So the ooh is literally stimulating those receptors that are in the gut. Sometimes the guts have what people have called, researchers have called, the second brain. It's not really like a brain, it's more diffuse network. But anyhow, I want to be able to say, okay, the threat is over. So I want to find a way to change that feedback loop so we just release it. So let's go. And usually when people do this, they feel things like tingling, warmth, but it can also bring up some, some sensations or feelings that might be distressing. But again, if they do come up, just notice how they can pass, how they can move through. Because these difficult sensations are like waves. They come up to a height, they crest, and then they recede back into the sea of sensations and feelings and emotions. So again, if you want to join it with me, please be free. And then when we have Q&A, you can also mention a couple of things maybe that you experienced in doing the exercise, okay? So, let the breath and the sound all the way out. Allow the breath to come in, filling belly and chest. And again, just notice sensations, feelings, thoughts, images, what comes up into your mind's eye. So this is really also a technique. It is a technique for restoring equilibrium, nervous system equilibrium. And again, that's certainly one of the key characteristics when we've suffered abuse and trauma, is that we're unable to regulate. And again, this is a way of regulating. And when we are regulated, then we're able to explore some of the events that may have happened to us throughout our childhood without being overactivated. Because again, if the person is overwhelmed to the nervous system, it really can't distinguish between that overwhelm and when it experienced overwhelm as part of a trauma. So again, it's really important to help settle the nervous system initially first in any kind of work that we do. Let's see, what else do we have? Oh, yes. I was going to say a little bit about shame and guilt, and then I'll do Q&A, and then we'll do a demo session with Emily, who's graciously agreed to participate in that way. So guilt is different than shame. Shame occurs at a much earlier developmental stage. And shame is also something that's it's a useful social emotion. So in other words, if we've done something, it could be inadvertently that's hurt somebody's feelings or something like that, and then we can say, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I didn't think about that. I apologize. So that comes from healthy shame. But shame that becomes habitual as children, or humiliation as children, that leaves a lasting imprint. Another thing about shame is my experience is that it comes also from not getting basically what we needed as babies, as young children. And so the children are geniuses in figuring things out. And what they may realize is that if they were the cause of something that was done to them, at least they would have some control. And so that's in a way where shame develops from our early experiences. It also, again, occurs when we've been shamed, habitually shamed and humiliated. And shame, again, is also something that affects us in our guts. And so doing this kind of exercise that I just mentioned can help undo some of that. One of the things that, because my development of somatic experiencing, a lot of that has to do with observing animals in their wild environment and also observing people that I would be interacting with, that I would be working with. And I was very much influenced by the ethologists. These are the people who study animal behavior in the wild, in their natural environments. And actually, the three important ethologists together won the Nobel Prize in, I think it was 1973. I had the privilege of having correspondence with Nicholas Timberg, and he was one of the people who did, who shared the Nobel. And what I've noticed, when something comes up with a person and there's a shame there can be a very subtle shift in the body. And as I learned to observe that, I observed that the shame body would be going something like this physically. I'm exaggerating it because it can be much more subtly, like with the shoulder exercise. And when they would go into that, what I called the posture of shame, they would feel this sense of badness. But by able to going into it a slight amount and coming out and back into an extension and feeling the polarity of that, they very frequently would observe that they were going from shame to pride and to dignity. So shame was like this, pride and dignity like this. Again, I'm exaggerating the movements because when I work with a person, we work very subtly, touching into it, sensing what it feels like, and then coming out. So how about this? I'll take a few minutes now of questions or feedback that you experienced in either the exercises. And then I will do a small session with you, Emily. And so let's take it away. I assume that you're managing how this works, right? Yes.
Yes. For questions,
Yes.
I think Maria would like you to repeat the technique of VU.
Yes. Okay. There are two things about the VU. First of all, it changes the breath. Okay. So you're driving in your car, and all of a sudden you see a car coming right towards you. And so you take an easy, deep out breath, right? No, of course, wrong. You go like that. Okay. And again, it's not uncommon that people who are holding stress and trauma, they're in a state of chronic inspiration. So the one aspect of that is deeply feeling into what an exhalation, an easy, spontaneous exhalation feels like. The other thing is the woo sound. You're actually vibrating these receptors that are in the gut. And then in doing that, sending the all clear message up to the brain that says, it's okay. It's over. You can let go. You can come back into life. Yeah.
Thank you. And
I really like Tanya's question. What's a practice someone could do at work or in the presence of others, kind of privately?
Yeah. Right. Actually, I do that, sometimes when I'm at the grocery store and there's a big line and I find myself getting a little impatient. So I might do an easy, "Ooh," and then everybody looks at me, and then some of them do the same thing, and we're all settled there. And once or twice, the people who work at the checkout counter, they also joined us. So I'm not suggesting you do that, but you can. Yeah. Any of these things, if you feel tension in the shoulders, just slightly raise them. And this is something that people are not going to likely notice, and then letting them go. And then just again, feel how it feels to de-stress our nervous system, to de-stress ourselves. I think I'll take maybe one more question.
Sure. Sophia is asking, how would you work with someone who has very little contact with their body feeling?
That is a very good question. And let's do another exercise that maybe gives you an idea of how you might work. First of all, you have to meet a person where they are. The sine qua non. You need to not to try to make them come into what your belief system is. So anyhow, some years ago, I was working with this young man who was diagnosed as on the spectrum, on the autism spectrum. And when we when we started, he would not be able to talk to me directly, but he would ask me questions through his computer. He would email me. We were sitting there together, and then I would mail him back. So that's where he needed to be met. This went on for a while, and now every New Year's, I get a beautiful card from he and his family, his wife, and a wonderful, beautiful child. I'm not saying again that every time you work, it's a miracle for people with autism, but again, what was essential is that I met him where he was, and that's where we have to meet the person where they are. Okay, so here's an example that may be again helpful. So just look at your hands and notice, looks like mine are, partly open, partly closed. So if they were more open, they'd be like this. If they were more closed, they would be like this. So just looking at your hands, just looking, and if they're more closed or whichever way they want to go, say mine want to get more closed. So I look at them getting more closed, and then I look at them getting more open. I look at them getting more closed. Now, in addition to looking, I invite you to put your awareness into your hands, to actually feel your hands physically. So when the hands are like this, when they're clenched, how is that different? How is that sensation different than when your hands are open? If you notice a difference, maybe feeling this one here, again, feeling the sensations, putting your mind into your hands as you feel them clenched, is there any sense of power or anger or what I call healthy aggression, which is about getting what we need in life? And then as our hands slowly open, slowly open, slowly open, is there any sensation that's something like reaching? Maybe imagine reaching for something that you really want in your life, reaching for it. And then whatever that is, bringing that towards you into your chest and into your heart. So most people will experience something in an exercise. And once, in the example I just gave, once you experience something, then other things start to unfold at their own time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a demonstration with Emily, who has kindly consented to be with me to do an exploration. And often what I'll do is I'll ask the person what they would like to have happen, what brings them here. So Emily, I ask that of you. What is it that you might want to have happen or would want to address or want to explore in some way?
The shame piece was something that I definitely wanted to explore, and how shame is held in my body.
Okay. Okay, good. Now, is there something recently that happened where that came up?
It's been a big piece of my entire life, but it's just something that I'm reflecting more on as of late.
Okay. Well, so let's just do that exercise together, okay? And just sensing in your body, if you can feel the beginning of a movement, usually it's away, it's looking down, and it's collapsing forward, and it's like our energy starts to go away. So I invite you to follow me, and we'll just explore what happens when you do that. And again, I don't want you to feel compelled that you have to say anything about, where this came from, or, even what it's like. But the more you can, the more we can work together with it. Okay. Okay. So again, now I notice here on your left side, exactly, your lips are pulled back a little, lip is pulled back a little bit. That's disgust, which is can be disgust, which is a companion of shame. So again, just noticing this pull, and then noticing your head going slightly turning down and folding forward a little bit. That's it, beautiful. And then slowly coming back up, slowly coming back up. Nice. And just rest there. And so I just noticed, instead of the disgust, there was the beginning of a smile on your lips. Can you say a little bit what you noticed?
When I like, 'cause I do have a tendency to just like kind of
Mhm.
go in, and
Yeah.
so it's like a protective thing for me. And so like kind of sitting with it and letting myself sit with it, it's easier. It almost feels like a release in its sense afterwards.
Beautiful. Again, that's the idea. Because again, a lot of times, if we try to meet things like shame head on, it can just reinforce the shame. So we kind of have to go around and find, what is it really, how is it embodied? And then if we change that, then does that feeling, that emotion change? So again, you showed this one to that. So let's do, again, very slowly, slowly coming in like this, and that's it. And then slowly coming back out. Slowly, wonderful. And I'm noticing your spine starting to lengthen. You sense that?
Yes.
Because that's the opposite of shame. That's completely the opposite of shame. Beautiful. So let's do the Wu exercise together and see if we can go more deeply into those pleasurable sensations, pleasurable feelings, or to deal with whatever comes up. Okay. So again, the idea, take an easy full breath on the exhalation, the Wu sound coming from the belly, letting the breath and the sound go all the way out, and then wait for the breath to come in on its own, filling belly, chest. Okay. Now, for some reason on Zoom, the Wu sound doesn't carry very well, but we'll work around that. So. And just rest. Right. And yeah, again, of course, I see the smile here and also in your eyes, but where else in your body are you experiencing that
I can
smile?
feel, yeah, I can feel my shoulders as I was finishing the VU and sitting it. I could actually feel like the release of tension in my shoulders and in my chest.
Great, great, good, good. Shall we do a little adding to this exercise now? Okay. There's a little bit like this, hands open, closed. So we'll start with the VU, and then joining it with your jaw. So on the exhalation again, so it's a little bit of a growl, like an animal growl. And when you do that, first you open your mouth, but then just open it to where you feel that there's a resistance, and then letting the mouth, the jaw close a little bit, and then again open a little bit more, just in a way like what we've been doing. We touch into it, And then, yeah. So I'll demonstrate it and then we do it together, okay? Ooh. Oh, wow.
Mhm.
There, feel those little movements in your body, that gentle swaying. I wonder if they feel pleasant, pleasurable.
It kind of reminds me of swinging as a kid, like dancing.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful. Maybe just go there with an image to see yourself swinging. Would it be on a swing? Let's look at that image of you as a child, about what age, more or less?
5, maybe.
Okay, so can you see that image of joyfully swinging? Yeah. Mm. And feel the tenderness of that child. And feeling the swaying, the gentle swaying. Because this is also sending an important signal to the primitive parts of the brain through the vestibular system. Right? Wow. Just noticing the sense of joy. Yeah. Yeah. And that's without any shame. That's a, a yeah. Yeah. So we do one more piece of the exercise.
Yeah.
And again, if anything that I suggest, if it doesn't feel right to do it, then we won't do it. Okay. Okay. So we'll start with the vu, then with the jaw, and then I'm going to make a certain movement with my arms and my hands. So I start. Ooh, wow, 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 wow.
Mm.
Wow, wow, wow. And I have a sentence to say, and again, if it feels useful. So these are my boundaries as you make the movement. These are my boundaries.
These are my boundaries.
These are my boundaries. And I put, yeah. And these boundaries are about the shame of not letting the shame keep affecting me.
And these boundaries are about not letting the shame affect me.
Wow, great. Yeah, yeah. What a beautiful smile.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, in a session, we could continue and maybe look at some of those specific times where shame became embodied or where the person's childhood stopped. Sometimes I'll ask the person, you know, I'm just wondering when your childhood ended. And usually that's a time when, things like shame got really embedded. But again, the main thing, and you demonstrated this beautifully, Emily, is that when something gets locked in the body, It has to get unlocked from the body to be able to come back into life. So one more sentence for you, if you're willing, one or two. I'm alive. I'm alive and I'm real.
I'm alive and I'm real.
And again, just notice sensations, feelings, thoughts, images. Yeah. Really. Yeah.
It's very grounding.
And grounding. Wow. That's great. That's really great. Yeah, yeah. You know, again, sometimes people ask, well, don't you relive trauma in somatic experiencing? And I say occasionally, but really what we're looking for is what we just processed, just integrated, is to feel more alive, to feel more present, to be able to be more in the here and now. So as you're in the here and now, Emily, are you in your house, in a room in your house, or?
No, I'm at my work, but I'm in a private
Okay,
room.
no, that's fine. Doesn't matter. I want you just to look around a little bit in your room and just see if there's something that kind of grabs your attention, something that you like.
I mean, I have a drawing that I'm working on next to me. But
Perfect. So what I want you to do is look at that drawing and just take that image into your eyes like magnets and bringing that image here into your eyes and down into your body, the rest of your body. You just notice how that feels in your body as you draw that image in. So it's another step in somatic experiencing, which is important, is again coming back into the here and now and orient and reorient, which again is exactly what you did. So as within, so without, as without, so within. Great. Well, thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And we have a little time just to ask some other questions, not necessarily about the session. And we'll then take the next 10 minutes to do that.
Sure, Peter, it's Carrie asking a few questions. A number of people, a vast number of people are having experience from the VU,
Yes.
which is wonderful. And could you tell us, how is the growl different from the VU?
Great. Thank you. I left that out. Okay. VU again is to regulate our vagus nerve. It's also to connect us to the nascent self. That's the first sense of self that we have. Well, you think about it in utero, in the umbilicus. You know, that's that primary life center is in our umbilicus, and so we're connecting also with that self, with that deeper self. The growl is about what I call healthy aggression. It's about getting what we need for ourselves and for people that we care about. And it's about our power to act and to be proactive. And so we're really connecting healthy aggression with our energy center here in the gut, in the belly. So that's really that important connection, a vitally important connection. And again, anything that helps people move towards greater regulation, greater sense of agency, a greater sense of connection with self and others, with self and environment, with environment, others. These are all ways to be able to come back into the here and now. And At one time, Bessel said, and this is one of the times I totally agreed with him. He said that trauma is a disorder of not being able to be in the here and now. And it is. That's really good counsel. And that's what we're looking for. Does the person become into greater presence and better connection with self, with others, with more ease in themselves and in their lives?
That may be the answer to this question, but Mary Beth is asking, how does one know when their system is regulated?
Yep, because you feel right. You feel better. You feel more connected to self and environment, and to self and others. You know, one of the classes I'm doing in Switzerland this summer is on relationships. And my organizer wanted me to do that. And I said, there's no way I can do that. I'm the last person to know something about relationships, but that's true for all of us. It's a learning. It takes us to next steps in our lives. And it's a really important gift. But until we have a relationship with ourselves, we're not going to be able to really have relationship with another. So being able to connect more to ourselves then allows us to connect more to others. You know, a person that I know, he wrote a book. This is James Hollis, called The Eden Project, in search for the magical other. So we're always looking for that other outside of ourselves. But first we have to connect with ourselves and with our stories, our histories, and then we can meet that other and see the other as other.
Thank you, Peter. One more question about the VU, and this is coming from many people. How often can I do it? How often should I do it? And can I do it every day or more than once a day?
There are no shoulds. Array shoulds. Array shoulds. Yeah, can do it whenever you want, when you feel more, and it helps you feel more settled. Sometimes it can bring up and can activate things that are a little bit scary. So, you know, you might want to just take the time to work with that. You know, it's always helpful to work with a therapist. You know, people have asked me, well, do I ever do therapy? You know, and the answer simply is, yeah, of course. You know, it's always good to have somebody to reflect with and to work with what might be emerging in our field. You know, I'm a big supporter of dreams. Actually, just did a workshop on dreams in San Diego, because dreams really are, like the Talmud says, an envelope that hasn't been opened, that it's really a connection to the soul. So I guess that would be another thing that I would say. Do we feel more connected with our deep selves, our deeper selves, and with our soul?
So perfect. I guess one last question I'll ask him, and this is someone who would like you to demonstrate that shame posture one more time so they
Sure.
can see that.
Gladly, gladly. Okay, so in shame, we want to avert the gaze of the other person. We don't want them to see us. And so we turn away, and then we turn away and look away. We avert our gaze so they can't make eye contact with us and saying, you're a bad person. We turn away, we turn down just a little bit, not that much, but just a little bit this time, and just rest there for some moments, and then slowly coming back up. And you saw this beautifully with Emily, where her whole spine lengthened, her chest opened and her spine lengthened towards the end of the session. So again, just slowly touching into it, resting there for a little bit, and then slowly coming back up. Again, sometimes disgust, which it actually is one of the antidotes for shame. We might see that first with the person's lips, as I did with Emily, and then use that to track down the rest of that postural set. You know, there's a person whose work that I actually became familiar with in the 1970s when I was doing my doctoral work. I would just spend the whole day in the library, and I was looking for a book. And then if I found a book, I would look for other books in that same area. So here I was with my egg salad sandwich and my notepad. Remember, this was way before computers. And I came across this work by a woman named Nina Bull called The Attitude Theory of Emotion. And it exactly talked to what I had been observing. And what she discovered, and she was at Columbia University, and they let her do research there, even though she didn't have a graduate degree. And she discovered that, for example, what you would do is you would train a person to become more aware of their body sensations. And then an observer that would look at those postural sets, basically like we're doing. And so what she discovered, say if you had the person think of anger, or even the word anger. So the jaw would clench and their hands would be ready to fight. And they could not go to another emotion until they unlocked that, what she called the postural set. I talk quite a bit about her work in an unspoken voice, how the body releases trauma and restores goodness. I have basically a chapter on her work. So in other words, to be able to go to another emotion, you have to undo the postural set of the emotion that you're in. So if you're angry and you can't go to joy until you unanger, so to speak. And so this again was just fitting in beautifully with what I was observing, and I have a great deal of respect. You can find the book, The Attitude Theory of Emotion, on Amazon. The last time I looked, it was for over $1,000.
And the author's name again?
Nina Bull, Bull, The Attitude Theory of Emotion. Yeah. Oh, well, okay. So, hey, it was really good meeting with you all, and Emily, having a chance to touch in with each other, and Carrie, to see your bright face again.
Thank you. Yours too. Mary, you're on mute.
Thank you.
Still on mute.
Still on
Mary.
mute.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Levine. This has been a really wonderful session. We're really so appreciative of your time today. Thanks to our volunteers and to our audience. Integrate strives to offer you a variety of body-based approaches that can support trauma treatment as inspired by The Body Keeps the Score. We look forward to seeing you all next time.